Entanglement and parallel universes. Quantum entanglement is often described as one of the strangest features of physics. When two particles become entangled, their states remain bound together no matter how far they are separated. A change in one instantly defines the state of the other, even if separated by vast distances. This connection bypasses the limits of classical communication, which always requires signals moving at finite speeds. Einstein famously described it as spooky action at a distance, and though he objected to the concept, experiments over decades have consistently confirmed it. Some theorists suggest that if particles on opposite sides of the cosmos can remain linked, then realities branching from quantum events might also remain correlated in ways we have not yet learned to measure. In this respect, entanglement intersects with another framework in physics, the many worlds interpretation. Many worlds proposes that every quantum event produces a branching, each possible outcome carrying forward in its own parallel world. From this point of view, countless versions of history unfold at once, though our everyday awareness locks onto only one. Here, some researchers speculate that consciousness could act like an anchor, selecting a single outcome from the branching possibilities. Entanglement complicates this picture further, because it implies that branches may not be entirely isolated. Instead, they could remain woven into a larger tapestry, stitched together by connections that persist beyond locality. This has led some to propose that our awareness, under certain conditions, might register echoes of those hidden linkages. For those studying reality shift reports, these ideas provide one speculative framework for puzzling witness accounts. An individual who misremembers or reimagines an event may fall well within psychology's scope. But when groups of people simultaneously describe the same contradictory change, a shop apparently moving locations, a family photo displaying different faces, the explanation becomes less clear. In such cases, a few theorists suggest entanglement-like networks as a possible mechanism. If consciousness operates with quantum processes, perhaps those processes can align across people. Under such a model, awarenesses would not exist independently, but would sometimes synchronize, allowing groups to experience anomalies together. This is a proposal only, one meant to explain synchrony that memory error alone struggles to cover. A research group in Kentucky published a speculative paper in 2025 along these lines. They outlined how microtubules inside neurons, where quantum activity has been hypothesized to influence consciousness, might participate in wider entanglement. Their idea was that these entangled links could sometimes extend beyond individual brains, operating as a network that shapes perception across multiple people at once. In such a model, when one consciousness shifted into registering an alternate possibility, others bound within that network might do the same. They argued that this would explain why some anomalies appear to be shared instantly and remembered consistently across separate witnesses, despite material evidence suggesting stability. The proposal is intriguing because it echoes common features of many reports. Families recall personal histories that apparently diverge, commuters insist a landmark switched locations, and neighbors describe simultaneous environmental changes. Traditional psychology explains memory distortion well at the level of individuals, but not always at the scale of groups who claim the same misplacement at the same time. The notion of entanglement-like networks provides a way to imagine why experience could ripple outward, synchronizing perception across people who share no obvious suggestive cues. Yet researchers stress this is speculative. No experiment has demonstrated entanglement of consciousness. The concept should be seen as a hypothesis rather than a conclusion. Testing it is especially difficult. Consciousness already presents enormous challenges for empirical science. Adding entanglement multiplies the complexity. Some have pointed to non-invasive methods like nuclear magnetic resonance that could, in principle, probe whether biological tissue sustains quantum coherence. Others suggest coupling brain states to entangled qubits in experimental settings. But these goals exceed what technology currently allows. Even studies of quantum coherence in microtubules or isotope-dependent responses to anesthetics, two lines of research often cited in connection with quantum consciousness, remain at the stage of suggestive signals, not definitive demonstrations. They hint that quantum processes might influence aspects of awareness, but do not show consciousness behaving as a macroscopic entangled system. This sets an important boundary. When accounts of shared anomalies are compared with entanglement, the idea remains an analogy or model. It is not an established mechanism. At best, It provides a way to think about how multiple witnesses come to describe identical irregularities, even though material records do not corroborate them. The takeaway for viewers is this: if entanglement-based models were ever confirmed, they could explain the simultaneity of such reports. But experimental proof would require breakthroughs well beyond what is now possible. Until then, entanglement remains a speculative lens rather than an answer. Still, even a speculative framework has value because it calibrates the scale of the puzzle. If memory distortion alone were responsible, each individual's errors would scatter. Instead, in some reports, they converge with remarkable precision. Entanglement at least provides a language for why patterns would line up, why anomalies would be experienced simultaneously, and why recollections would synchronize. The fleeting nature of many events adds to this picture. Just as entangled states collapse quickly when disturbed, these anomalous experiences often vanish in a short span, leaving only memories that contradict the physical record. By analogy, the shared awareness may briefly align, then restabilize, producing accounts that feel consistent among witnesses but leave no measurable trace. Critics remain unconvinced and argue that social and psychological factors offer stronger explanations. Collective memory distortion, suggestibility, and subtle cues among witnesses can generate apparently shared recollections, even when no anomaly occurred. Well-documented research in psychology shows that groups can reinforce false memories until they align across multiple people. From this perspective, invoking quantum entanglement adds unnecessary complexity. It moves beyond available data and risks confusing metaphors for validated processes. Supporters, however, see value in keeping the question open. They point out that entanglement is real at the particle scale, and that research into quantum processes in biological systems is underway. Failing to test, or at least consider its possible role in consciousness, could mean missing a viable explanation for outliers that current models cannot address. For them, the fact that entanglement is already part of mainstream physics gives it more weight than explanations relying solely on cultural contagion or coincidence. What both sides agree on is the need for restraint. Borrowing language from physics can make models sound more certain than they are. For now, experiments measuring coherence in microtubules and anesthetic isotope effects show slight but intriguing patterns, not confirmation of consciousness entanglement. Any full validation would require technologies able to link subjective awareness with objective quantum measures in real time, a step still years away. Yet even as speculation, entanglement networks illustrate the kinds of questions now shaping the conversation. They suggest that anomalies might not only be individual quirks, but perhaps group-level dynamics tied to a deeper fabric. Whether that fabric operates through quantum mechanics, psychology, or culture remains unresolved. What matters is that the reports exist, and they often point to synchrony among witnesses that simple misremembering does not easily resolve. With this in mind, the role of entanglement and parallel universes stands less as an explanation than as a reminder. Reality shift accounts have attracted frameworks from across the sciences because they resist easy classification. Entanglement models are unproven, but they capture one possible route for why people sometimes remember the same impossible detail together. Until experiments catch up, they remain possibilities on the edge of science, bridges between established physics and lived testimonies that unsettle our sense of continuity. And it is in these unsettled spaces that the larger issue returns. Across the many cases we have already seen, families divided by memory, spaces rearranged overnight, witnesses convinced of alternate outcomes, the central question emerges: are people misperceiving, or are they, in some form, crossing timelines? Case 4. The father's wrong history. In February of 2025, a college student returned home for a weekend with her family, expecting nothing more unusual than conversation about studies and future plans. What unfolded during that visit, however, challenged her sense of stability within her own household. While eating dinner together, her father began telling stories of her teenage years, holidays, hobbies, and school events that she did not recognize at all. He spoke warmly, as though recalling familiar moments, but each detail sounded foreign to her lived experience. At first, she dismissed it as an ordinary lapse. Parents sometimes confuse memories, blending moments between children or recalling events out of order. But instead of easing, the situation intensified. The father mentioned vacations they had never taken, friends she had never known, and activities she had never joined. Most strikingly, he insisted she had once played high school soccer, remembering specific matches, injuries, and even scores. She corrected him, pointing out that she had never joined a team. Rather than reconsider, he grew more insistent. To her surprise, her mother nodded along at certain points, as if parts of his recollections sounded familiar, while siblings disagreed and supported her account instead. What began as an anecdote at dinner became a tightly wound disagreement about the student's own history. The student felt confident she could demonstrate that her version of events was not simply forgetful contrarianism. Since early adolescence, she had kept a detailed journal and had preserved countless photos and videos. In addition, her phone still contained message threads from friends that documented her routines and social life. Each record aligned with her own memories and stood in contrast to the alternate timeline her father described. For her, these records were an anchor. They supported her memory, and the clash created a raw family rift. Yet when she laid them out, her father remained certain that what he remembered had truly happened. He described scenes with striking detail: the uniform she supposedly wore, the atmosphere of matches he swore he attended, the way she looked under floodlights during an evening game. It was not vagueness but confidence, presented as memory he could see vividly in his own mind. Family discussions turned increasingly tense. Some believed stress or age might have distorted her father's recollections. Others privately admitted his level of detail made them wonder if something stranger was taking place. For the student, the conflict felt almost like two overlapping versions of her life colliding under one roof. When her father talked, she imagined that he carried the perspective of a timeline that had never been hers. Whether this was merely confusion or something more inexplicable, the sense of dissonance left her unsettled. Psychologists note that such disagreements over memory can stem from well-documented mechanisms. Confabulation, in which the brain unintentionally creates false details to fill memory gaps, often produces stories that feel authentic to the person telling them. Source monitoring errors, where a person misattributes whether they directly experienced something or only heard it described, can also give rise to misplaced conviction. Even social reinforcement plays a role. Once a memory is expressed and echoed by others, it can feel harder to dismiss, regardless of whether it is accurate. Within this framework, the father's wrong history was deeply unsettling, but need not be paranormal. Yet the daughter argued that her father's persistence seemed to stretch beyond what these explanations could neatly contain. The clash remained confined to ordinary household life, but it did not pass quickly. In the days following, as they tried to resume normal routines, her father continued to revisit his alternate history. He casually brought up supposed disputes they had, milestones they celebrated, or special gifts he claimed to have given her. She listened each time, unable to reconcile his elaborate detail with her own corroborating records. Rather than calming, his sense of certainty made her feel as though their lives were being historically rewritten in real time. Online, after snippets of the story were shared in forums devoted to unexplained experiences, commentators connected her situation to theories of consciousness and reality shifts. Some argued that what she described aligned with localized incoherence, a term researchers occasionally use to describe contradictory realities experienced by members of the same group. Though speculative, this framing intrigued those who collect such accounts, because it suggested that the father's conviction could represent an imported memory track from a different unfolding of family history. One of the scientific frameworks referenced in discussions was the orchestra, or model. Proponents of this idea argue that consciousness arises from quantum processes in microtubules within the brain's neurons. When these quantum states collapse, they create moments of awareness. Some theorists suggested that if collapse patterns misalign or fluctuate, an individual could access a sequence of potential events inconsistent with the majority reality. In such a case, the father's memories might be genuinely real to him, even though they did not align with the documented experiences of his daughter. Another hypothesis raised involved entanglement. Quantum entanglement links particles regardless of their distance, binding their states together so that change in one influences the other. Those who apply this idea to consciousness suggest that human awareness could similarly reach across alternative versions of events. If her father's conscious processes were somehow linked to another timeline, he could retain memories of a daughter who once lived those experiences, even while residing in the present version where she did not. To him, the details were familiar because they reflected a history he genuinely carried, even if no one else in his current environment recognized it. Most academic voices, however, cautioned against these speculative models. Cognitive psychologists insisted that no exotic explanation was required. They pointed out that people frequently carry strong misremembered experiences that withstand contradiction, including those later disproven by objective records. The father's altered memories, they argued, fit this pattern. According to this school of thought, he was not crossing timelines but demonstrating the natural vulnerability of human memory. Suggestion, reinforcement, and the brain's reconstructive processes could easily generate entire false histories embedded with sensory richness. Later we'll examine why memory, grief, and even speculative quantum models are all invoked to explain cases like this. But for the family involved, abstract frameworks mattered little. The daughter described her daily life as increasingly alien, surrounded by reminders of both versions of her past. Her father continued to refer casually to circumstances she had no knowledge of, while she relied on her journals and photos to remind herself that her own reality was still intact. The house became quieter, with relatives avoiding the subject entirely to prevent conflict. By mid-2025, the story had circulated enough to reach researchers compiling examples of apparent timeline divergence within single households. They did not claim proof. They noted instead that such cases highlight how fragile the boundary between agreed memory and individual conviction can be. For the daughter, the phrase localized incoherence, used in research circles, was a cold description for what she was living. A sense that she and her father inhabited parallel strands of family history that stubbornly overlapped yet never fully aligned. The longer the dispute persisted, the more difficult it became to dismiss outright. Unlike a fleeting hallucination or a misunderstood photograph, this conflict lingered for weeks, influencing moods, conversations, and trust. Whether the cause was ordinary memory distortion, neurological quirk, or a consciousness shift that science cannot yet measure, the weight it carried over their daily lives was unmistakable. These disagreements left the family fractured, but still attempting to coexist. A contrast between a daughter anchored by journals and evidence, and a father firm in an unseen reality. While their situation may never be resolved, it raised questions about whether mismatched memories signal error or hint at something more profound. That unresolved tension set the stage for another story later in 2025, when a different individual returned home to find that the strangeness they faced was not only in memories, but in the very arrangement of their own living space. Case 5, the Mirror Apartment. In January of 2025, a tenant in a European city walked into his flat and froze. The apartment was recognizably his, same walls, same furniture, same framed photographs, but everything within it seemed arranged in a way that was subtly, yet disturbingly altered. A sofa that had always been pressed against one wall now faced the opposite direction. The dining table appeared rotated, as if set for an unfamiliar arrangement. Above the kitchen doorway, a family photo displayed faces he recognized, but in ways he could not reconcile. Slightly different expressions, hair parted differently, the kind of alterations that felt impossible to overlook. His first instinct was that someone had broken in, rearranged the rooms as a prank, and left. All doors and windows were locked, however, and nothing of value was missing. Standing in that uncanny space, he began recording on his phone. The footage that night captured a layout that looked reversed against his memory. Individual items appeared mirrored with unusual precision. A ceramic bowl that he swore had always been on the left. Shelf now rested on the right. Smaller decorative objects, too, seemed systematically offset, creating a symmetry across the entire space that should not have existed. Speaking aloud in the recording, he repeated that he knew the arrangement by heart from years of living there. The changes, he insisted, were not subtle misplacements but a systematic rewriting of the apartment's interior. At first he treated it like a strange form of burglary. Perhaps intruders had gained entry and shifted objects around not to steal but to disturb. Yet with no evidence of forced entry, valuables undisturbed, and several personal photographs showing unfamiliar details, that explanation began to collapse. Later conversations with others in the building suggested he was not alone in noticing oddities. A neighbor mentioned that her hallway light seemed to have swapped sides, another that a window frame looked a different shade than before. Such remarks remained anecdotal and inconsistent, but they left enough of a trace to make him feel his confusion was not solitary. Looking for answers, the tenant turned to groups that document anomalous events across Europe. He uploaded his video to one such forum, where it began circulating, quickly gaining attention. Members ran it through the kinds of basic checks often used to weed out deliberate hoaxes: metadata review, timestamp verification, simple continuity assessments. The recording passed those community tests, which gave the account traction. Yet as even the moderators reminded viewers, these checks cannot meet the standards of academic review. Timestamps can be manipulated, digital metadata can be altered, and what looks persuasive online remains unverified without independent oversight. What the case achieved was not proof, but visibility. Those who watched the video fell into two main camps. Critics argued it showed less about altered reality than about altered perception. Stress, exhaustion, or sudden neurological events can produce distortions in spatial awareness that feel utterly real to the person experiencing them. This would explain why the tenant reacted so strongly. Under such conditions, adrenaline amplifies any mismatch between internal memory maps and immediate perception, creating the sense that an entire space has shifted. Neighbors, hearing the account, might have unconsciously aligned their own small discrepancies, colors, fixtures, arrangements, into a narrative of collective change. For skeptics, there was no mirror apartment at all, only a cascade of suggestion coupled with the malleability of human perception. On the other side stood viewers who found the footage harder to explain away. The position of furniture and objects was not vague. It appeared exact, as if someone had indeed reflected the environment. More troubling still, the photographs he pointed out in his recording did not simply look moved but altered, the features of family members subtly different. For believers, this hinted at something beyond psychology. They leaned on theories of altered consciousness, suggesting the man might have re-entered his home through a version of reality nearby his own. In that version, the same apartment existed, yet arranged in a mirrored way, complete with traces of personal history, not fully his. These kinds of shifts, they argued, leave behind physical evidence impossible to explain as simple misremembering. Paranormal discussions embraced another interpretation, entangled realities. In this view, objects and environments resonate across not one timeline but many. If entanglement can operate at macroscopic levels, then parts of a neighboring version of his apartment might have overlapped into his experience. The mirrored arrangement would be the residue of that overlap, an intrusion of pattern rather than a quirk of perception. For communities already convinced that reality may fluidly connect across layers, the mirror apartment was a compelling addition to the growing archive. Psychologists remained cautious, emphasizing how memory cues function in familiar spaces. People generally track arrangements through expectation and habit more than detailed encoding. It is common, research shows, for tenants and long-term residents to misremember object placement when prompted, filling the gap with confident but false recollection. If a disruption occurs, whether sleep deprivation, stress, or a neurological event, the dissonance between memory template and observed reality sharpens into an overwhelming feeling that something major has changed. When others echo the experience, the cycle of reinforcement deepens. In their interpretation, the mirror apartment was unsettling, but not supernatural. The tenant himself insisted the photographs remain the most disturbing aspect. A sofa may be moved, a table rotated, but pictures of loved ones should not change. He said certain expressions no longer matched his memory, and even digital copies he had saved seemed somehow wrong when he viewed them again. For him, this evoked more than misplaced objects. It felt like a breach in personal continuity. Was he remembering his family as it was, or as it no longer had ever been? The sense of violation carried beyond aesthetics. He likened it to a theft of identity lodged inside everyday life. What the mirror apartment demonstrates is how small details, when placed against stable expectations, can destabilize a person's entire sense of reality. A reversed sofa or a differently framed photograph does not sound extraordinary. Yet when those details contradict lived certainty, they threaten the trust we place in perception. This tension makes such accounts uniquely compelling. They sit uncomfortably between ordinary misperception and extraordinary possibility, each explanation unsatisfying to at least half of those who encounter it. Either this is an extreme, hard-to-fake perceptual report, or it is a cascade of suggestibility and stress-related misperception. We don't yet have a decisive test. What we do have is a record that circulated widely, casting new attention on how such anomalies are tracked and debated. And it was just one case in what became a much larger wave, because by mid-decade, claims like these were no longer isolated. They were multiplying across countries, communities, and platforms in numbers no one had predicted. The rising tide of reports. Between 2020 and 2025,